Amara was thin and tired. She had not eaten for 2 days. Her stomach hurt. Hunger was her only friend. She held a worn cloth in her small hand. The cloth was torn at the edge. She wore a faded shirt and old pants. Dirt covered her feet. Stood before a tall metal gate. Behind it, she saw a big house with many windows. She felt cold inside her bones. The wind blew leaves across the drive. She took a deep breath. She tried to be brave, but her heart beat fast. She had one wish. She wanted to eat. She told herself she could do this. She stepped closer to the gate and looked up. A guard stood by the gate. He was tall and wore a dark uniform. His face was hard. Amara felt small next to him. She raised her cloth. Her hands shook. She called. In a quiet voice, "Can I clean your house for food?" The words felt heavy in her mouth. She closed her eyes and waited. Her heart pounded like a drum. She felt alone and afraid. The guard looked at her. He said nothing. She swallowed hard. She prayed in her mind. She did not move an inch. She hoped he would say yes, but she was not sure. That brought her fear back. The guard stayed silent for a long moment. Amara stared at his boots. She felt the rough stone under her feet. She thought of the last time she had anything to eat. That was 2 days ago. She had begged at a soup kitchen, but the line was long. They had closed the door before she reached the front. She looked at the gate again. It felt like a wall between her and the food she needed. She felt tears rise. In her eyes, she quickly blinked them away. She did not want to seem weak. Finally, the guard lifted one hand. He waved her in. Amara's heart skipped a beat. She pressed her palm against the cool metal of the gate. It opened with a soft sound. She walked through the gap. The gate closed behind her with a loud click. She jumped at the noise. She stood, silent for a moment. Then she took a shaky step forward. She was inside the guard's yard. The ground was smooth and clean. The path led to a large front door. Golden lights spilled from the windows. Amara felt a spark of hope. She wondered if she could keep her promise. Amara looked around the large yard. She saw green grass and neat flower beds. Bright flowers bloomed. In red and yellow, a tall tree stood to one side. Its leaves cast a soft shadow. The air smelled fresh. She could hear birds in the branches. The path was made of smooth stones. Each stone was set in sand. She kept her cloth in her hand. She moved with care so she did not trip. She passed a fountain that trickled water. The sound was calm and soft. She felt both fear and wonder. She walked up the stone steps to the front door. It was big and heavy. She reached out and touched it. She held the cloth tight. She took a deep breath. Then she knocked 3 times. A faint voice called, "Come in." The door swung open. Inside was a long hall. The floor was bright white tile. It shone under the lights. The walls were painted a pale cream. Paintings hung in gold frames. They looked like family pictures. Amara felt like she had stepped into a dream. She stepped inside slowly. She heard her shoes click on the tile. She saw a small table with a vase of fresh flowers. The scent of roses and lilies filled the air. She walked past the table and began to dust a low shelf. She held the cloth tight and wiped gently. She did not want to damage anything. The shelf was full of small objects. Some looked like clocks. Others were shells and stones. Each item sat in a neat row. She could not read the small labels, but she worked with care and respect. As she dusted, she felt a new feeling. Pride sprang in her chest. She had done all she could to survive. She had learned to work hard. This was more work than before, but it was honest work. She felt her heart calm. The cloth brushed over the wood and left it free of dust. She saw tiny scratches that she could not reach. She said a small prayer. She hoped that her effort was enough. She wanted to keep her promise for food. She wanted to show respect in this rich house. She moved on to a glass cabinet. It was clear and bright. She wiped each glass panel. Her hands moved in long, even strokes. She saw her own faint reflection in the glass. She looked like a ghost. Her eyes were wide. She felt embarrassed for a moment. Then she remembered her task. She bent her head and focused on the work. The stroke of the cloth cleared more dust. She felt the smooth surface under her fingers. The glass shone like it was new. She felt proud and strong. Time passed in silence. The only sound was the cloth brushing. She felt her arms grow tired. She shook them out and kept going. She knew there was more to clean. But her mind was full of one thought. Food, she thought. Of warm rice and beans. She thought of fresh bread and butter. Her mouth watered. She had not tasted fresh food in days. She dreamed of a full plate. She would work harder to earn every bite. She would not waste a crumb. She would be thankful. For each taste at last, she heard movement behind her. A gentle cough made her turn. An older woman stood in the doorway. She wore a plain dress and a neat apron. The woman held a small tray. On it sat a plate of warm rice and beans and a cup of water. Amara's eyes grew wide. She had never seen food served like that. The woman looked at her kindly. She spoke in a soft tone. "Child, you may eat first." Amara's voice caught as she said, "Thank you, ma'am." The housekeeper led Amara to a low chair. She sat down with the plate in her lap. Her hands shook as she picked up a fork. The rice was warm and soft. The beans were tender and salty. She took a small bite and closed her eyes. Flavor bloomed in her mouth. She felt tears in her eyes, but they were happy tears. She ate slowly and with care. She did not rush. Each mouthful felt like a gift. She drank water between bites. She felt her strength return. When she finished, Amara looked up.
Us.
The woman smiled and said, "You may go back to work now." Amara wiped her mouth with the cloth. She felt hope in her heart. She picked up her duster and stood. She took a deep breath. She would keep her promise. She wanted to repay their kindness. She stepped back into the hall. For a moment, she closed her eyes. She felt like she was safe. She took her first step toward a new life inside the big house. Amara moved deeper into the house, carrying her duster and cloth-like tools of hope. She passed through a wide doorway into a large living room. Tall windows let in soft light. The floor was made of polished wood, smooth and warm under her small shoes. A thick rug lay in the center, its pattern bright but covered in dust. She felt the tickle of nerves as she stepped onto it. She knelt down, careful not to pull at its edges, and began to beat the dust out with her free hand. Tiny particles swirled in the air, catching the light like faint stars. She worked slowly, methodically, making 2 passes over each section. Her muscles ached, but she welcomed the ache. It reminded her she was alive and working for her meals. When she finished the rug, she stood and rubbed her tired arms. She looked around the room. A grand piano sat in one corner, its black surface dull with neglect. She ran her cloth over its lid, soft strokes that revealed its true shine. 8. She felt a thrill as the first patch of gleaming ebony appeared. She pressed the cover latch gently, opened the lid and dusted the keys one by one. Her fingers hovered over the keys as if she might play. But she had never learned music. Still, she admired the promise of songs hidden beneath the dust. A small smile touched her lips before she blinked it away. She had work to do, not play. A tall bookshelf dominated. Another wall? Amara climbed onto a low stool and began dusting the shelves. Each shelf held rows of books, some old, some thick, some leather-bound. She loved the smell of old pages. She wished she could read them all. She pressed the cloth against the spines and moved downward in neat lines. When she reached the bottom shelf, she paused. She wondered what stories lay within those covers. She dreamed of words that might carry her away from her hunger. But then hunger tugged at her mind, and she returned to her task. Each sweep of the cloth was a step toward tomorrow's meal. Footsteps sounded behind her, soft and deliberate. Amara paused and turned. A tall man stood at the far end of the room. His suit was dark and fine. His hair was silver at the temples. He watched her with calm eyes. Amara froze. She had not heard him approach. Her jaw tightened, and she dropped her cloth in surprise. The cloth fell to the rug with a faint thud. She reached for it, but did not move. The man did not speak. He only watched. Amara's heart beat so loud she feared he could hear it. She tried to steady her breath, to stand still like a statue. Finally, he nodded once and stepped forward. Amara picked up her cloth, ready to bow or speak, but he held up a hand. "Please, continue," he said in a gentle voice. Relief flooded her as she bent back to her work. Yet she could not wipe away the feeling that something important had just happened. Amara worked more slowly now, her fingers brushing over each book with extra care. The man leaned against a doorway, arms crossed. He stayed for several minutes, silent. Amara felt his gaze again and again, like a soft weight on her back. She dared not look up. When she dared a quick glance, she saw his eyes were kind. He did not judge her. He simply watched. Oh, that gave her courage. She straightened her shoulders and moved with more confidence. The book shone beneath her cloth. The shelf looked bright and neat. She finished the top row and moved on to the next. When she finished the last shelf, she stepped down and held her cloth to her chest, waiting. The man gave a small smile and nodded. Amara felt a blooming pride in her chest. She had done well. Next, she walked toward a long window seat. Cushions lay on it, pale and dusty. She sat down carefully and pulled each cushion off. She set them on the floor and patted them gently to push out the dust. Then she took her cloth and wiped the wooden seat frame. The wood was carved with swirling patterns. She traced each curve with her finger, imagining the hand that carved it long ago. She thought of her own hands, rough and small, and felt a strange kinship with the craftsman. She replaced each cushion with care, fluffing them before placing them back. When she finished, the seat looked inviting and soft. She stood and looked out of the window. The garden glowed in the afternoon light. She longed to feel grass under her toes, but she stayed inside. A soft chime rang somewhere in the depths of the house. Amara did not know what it signaled. She only heard the sound and knew time passed. She moved on to a side table near the door. It held a silver tray with glass decanters and small cups. She lifted each cup, washed them with her cloth, and set them back. She polished the tray until it gleamed. Then she turned to a vase of dried flowers. Their petals were brittle and pale. She plucked each petal and swept them into her hand, then left the vase empty. She thought the room would be brighter without dying blooms. It felt like clearing space for new life. She smiled at the thought and moved to the next task. Amara heard the gentle creak of a door farther down the hall. She paused, listening. The guard must be making his rounds, she thought. She would not want to surprise him as she did the man before. She moved quietly toward the hall entrance. She stood near the threshold and peered out, and the corridor stretched. Away, lit by wall sconces, she could see a glimpse of a red carpet leading to the stairs. She took a steadying breath and stepped into the hall. She dusted the sconces and their glass covers. The crystals sparkled like tears in the light. She felt a pang of sadness and thought of her mother's pearls, lost long ago. But she shook her head and kept working. There was no time for sorrow. As she finished the last sconce, the tall man appeared again. He stood in the archway, hands in his pockets. Amara looked up and caught his eye. She bowed her head, mind racing. "Sir, I'm sorry," she whispered. He came forward and shook his head. "Oh, you need not be sorry," he said. His voice was warm. "You do good work." Amara felt her face grow hot. No one had ever praised her work before. She looked at the floor. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. He stepped closer and offered his hand. Amara hesitated, then took it. His hand was large and firm, but gentle. He helped her up. "I am Victor Langford," he said. "Thank you for your help today." Amara blinked in surprise. She had never met a billionaire before. She tried to say her name, but the words caught in her throat. Finally, she whispered, "I am Amara." He smiled. The warmth in his eyes chased away her fear for a moment. Victor turned and motioned down the hall. "There is one more room I would like you to clean," he said. Amara nodded. She set her cloth and duster in her free hand. She followed him, careful to match his steps. He led her to a heavy door with no windows. He placed a hand on the knob and held it for her. Amara glanced up, surprised. He stepped back. She reached out and opened the door. Inside was a small study. Books lined the walls, and a big desk stood near one wall. A leather chair faced the desk. Amara's breath caught. This room felt private, like someone's thoughts lived here. She swallowed. "You may begin," Victor said softly. Amara stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She would work quietly. She would show him her best. Amara set to work in the study. She dusted the desk first, moving pieces of paper gently aside. She saw notes, letters, and drawings. She paused to look at a small photo on the desk, a young girl laughing in a garden. Amara felt a flicker of something warm in her chest. Did not know why. She dusted around the photo and then moved her cloth across the desk's surface. She wiped the chair's back and arms, careful not to scuff the leather. She moved to the shelves, dusting each book and pushing them slightly forward. She straightened a row of small statues near the window. Each one was carved from stone, smooth and heavy-looking. She set them evenly across the shelf. When she finished, the study looked neat and ready for work. Victor waited outside, silent and patient. Amara did not notice him until she opened the door. She stepped out and bowed her head. Victor smiled. "Thank you, Amara," he said. "That room looks perfect." Amara felt a surge of pride. "You're welcome, sir," she said softly. Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He handed it to her. Amara took it, curious and a little afraid. "Open it later," he said. Amara nodded again. She folded the envelope and tucked it into her tunic. She did not peek. She wanted to earn his trust. Victor turned and walked down the hall. Amara followed until they reached the front door. The guard was there, leaning against the gate, straightened when he saw them. Victor nodded to the guard. Amara stepped out into the cool evening air. The gate clicked shut behind her. She stood alone for a moment, breathing in the night. Then she smiled. She had finished her work. She had earned her food. And she carried a mystery in her pocket, one that might change her life forever. Amara walked out of the big house as the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the world in warm orange and pink. Her stomach felt fuller than it had in days, but her mind spun with thoughts. In her hand she held the small envelope that Victor Langford, the kind billionaire, had given her. She had not opened it yet. She didn't dare, not in front of anyone. She wanted to find a quiet place, somewhere safe, to see what was inside. She found an empty bench under a tall tree just outside the mansion's garden wall. There she sat, down, took a slow breath, and opened the envelope. Inside was a crisp note with a few words in neat handwriting. "Thank you for your help, Amara. Please come again tomorrow if you are hungry. Victor." Under the note was a folded $5 bill. Amara's eyes widened. She had never held so much money at once before. She pressed the bill to her chest, feeling tears fill her eyes. She quickly wiped them away. She didn't want anyone to see her cry, even if they were happy tears. Night was falling, and Amara knew she needed to find shelter. She walked through the streets, looking for a quiet corner. She found a spot behind a bakery where the smell of bread drifted through the air. She curled up against the wall, using her bag as a pillow, and tried to sleep. As she drifted off, she thought about the day. She thought about Victor's gentle eyes and the warm meal she'd eaten in his kitchen. She wondered if she really would be welcome to return. Morning came, cold and bright. Amara woke with the sun in her eyes and hunger once again in her belly. She remembered the $5 and the promise of food if she returned. She brushed the dust from her pants and ran her fingers through her hair. She wanted to look neat. She walked quickly back to the mansion, hope rising in her chest. When she reached the gate, the same guard was there. He raised an eyebrow when he saw her. "I came back to clean," Amara said, her voice a little stronger today. The guard nodded, almost smiling this time. He opened the gate and let her in. As she walked up the path, she saw Victor standing on the porch, his hands in his pockets. He was watching her with a strange, searching look on his face. Amara felt her heart flutter, but she gave him a brave smile. "Good morning, Amara," Victor said. "Did you eat last night?"
Yes.
She nodded. "Thank you for the food and the money, sir." Victor smiled, but his eyes seemed troubled. He motioned her inside. Today the house felt a little different. The light through the windows was soft, and everything seemed quieter. Amara set to work, dusting the shelves and wiping down the furniture. Victor stayed nearby, watching her closely. He looked at her face every few moments, almost as if searching for something familiar. After an hour, Victor asked Amara to help him in his study again. She followed him down the hallway. He stopped in front of a large mirror by the stairs. He looked at her reflection, then at his own, then back at her. Amara glanced at herself. Her cheeks were thin, her hair wild, but her eyes were bright and determined. Suddenly, Victor knelt down to her level. "Amara, do you have any family?" he asked softly. Amara shook her head. "I don't know where they are," she whispered. "I have an old photo. That's all I have left." Reached into her pocket and took out the worn photo. Held it out with both hands. Victor took the photo gently, as if it was something precious. He looked at it for a long time. His face changed, and Amara saw his hands tremble a little. The photo was of a woman and a young girl in a sunlit garden. The woman's smile was gentle, and the little girl was laughing. Amara watched Victor's face carefully. She wondered why he looked so shocked. Victor's voice was hushed, almost a whisper. "Where did you get this photo?" Amara swallowed hard. "It was with me since I was little. I don't remember much, just that the woman used to sing to me. I think she was my mother." Victor stood up slowly, his face pale. He looked at Amara, then at the photo, then back at Amara again. The resemblance was clear. The little girl in the photo had the same eyes, the same shape of face as Amara. Victor suddenly realized that this girl, hungry and alone, reminded him so much of someone he had lost a long time ago. Victor's mind raced. He remembered his younger sister Elise, who had gone missing when she was very small. His family had searched everywhere, but she had never been found. He wondered, could it be possible? Could Amara be related to him? The idea seemed unbelievable. But the photo, the eyes, the story, they all pointed to a truth he couldn't ignore. He sat down in a nearby chair, his hands shaking. Amara stood quietly, unsure if she had done something wrong. Victor looked up at her, his eyes soft with emotion. "Amara, would you let me ask some questions?" he said gently. Amara nodded.
Yes.
He asked about her earliest memories, about the songs her mother sang, about the places she had lived. She told him what little she remembered. Each answer matched what Victor remembered about his sister's childhood. His heart felt heavy and full at the same time. He wondered if fate had brought this brave little girl to his door for a reason. Victor called for his housekeeper, Mrs. Lane, and asked her to bring tea and some food for Amara. While they waited, Victor searched through his old photo albums. He found a photo of Elise as a child, standing in a garden very much like the one in Amara's picture. He showed it to Amara. She gasped and touched the photo. "That's the garden, I remember. Those flowers," she said softly. Victor felt a wave of hope rise in his chest. He gently took Amara's hand. "Amara, I think you might be my family. I think you are Elise." Amara's eyes filled with tears, but she was not sure what to believe. She had lived so long without family. She hardly remembered what it felt like to belong to someone. She nodded, not knowing what else to do. Mrs. Lane arrived with tea and sandwiches. Amara ate quietly, her mind spinning. Victor made a phone call. He asked for someone who could help find out the truth, a private investigator, someone who could look up records and check facts. He wanted to know if his hope was real. He wanted to help Amara, no matter what. As the day went on, Amara continued cleaning, but her mind kept wandering. Every time she saw Victor, she wondered if he truly meant what he said. She felt a strange hope in her heart, mixed with worry, for she had never expected anything like this to happen. Before she left that afternoon, Victor knelt beside her and said, "Will you come back tomorrow, Amara?" She nodded, promising she would. Victor smiled and gave her another small envelope. This time, Amara did not wait. She hugged him quickly, shy but grateful. Victor looked surprised but pleased. As Amara walked out of the mansion and down the driveway, the sky was full of gold and blue. She felt a new warmth in her heart. For the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe she was not so alone in the world. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance to find her true family and a place to belong. 2-2. Amara woke up early, long before the sun rose. She could not sleep for long that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind replayed Victor's words. He said she might be his family. He called her Elise, the name of his little sister who was lost years ago. Amara wondered if it could be true. Was it possible that after so many years of being alone, she could finally belong somewhere? She clutched the 2 small envelopes Victor had given her, holding them close to her heart. She wanted to believe his kindness was real. She had known only hard days and cold nights for so long. Now she had hope, like a tiny light inside her. She brushed off her pants, put on her shirt, and walked toward the mansion before the morning had fully arrived. When she reached the tall iron gate, the guard recognized her and opened it without a word. This time, Amara walked with more confidence up the stone path. The sun was just beginning to shine, making the grass sparkle with dew. The house looked beautiful in the golden light. Amara wondered if maybe this could be her new home one day. As she walked through the front door, Mrs. Lane, the housekeeper, greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Amara. Come in. Mr. Langford is waiting for you in the study," she said with a smile. Amara's heart beat fast as she stepped inside. She moved through the grand halls, passing the shiny floors and quiet paintings. She entered the study where Victor sat, looking thoughtful but hopeful. "Good morning, Amara," Victor said, standing up as she came in. "Did you sleep well?" Amara nodded shyly, not wanting to say she had slept on the cold ground again. Victor did not ask more. Instead, he handed her a warm cup of cocoa and a plate with bread and fruit. Amara's eyes lit up. She sat and ate, her hunger fading with each bite. After breakfast, Victor sat across from her at the big wooden desk. He seemed nervous but kind. "Amara," he began softly, "I asked someone to help us find out the truth about your family. I want to help you, but I also want to be sure." Amara listened carefully. She saw how much Victor cared. He was not like other adults she had met before. He was gentle and honest. A little while later, a man in a suit arrived at the door. He was the private investigator Victor had called. The man's name was Mr. Harris. He sat down and spoke kindly to Amara, asking simple questions. "Do you remember where you were born? Do you ever hear your mother's name?" Amara shook her head. "No, I only remember songs and a garden. My mother called me Little Star. That is all." And Mr. Harris nodded and wrote everything. Down in his notebook, Mr. Harris asked Victor for the old family photographs. Victor handed over the picture Amara had brought and another photo of his own sister Elise. The investigator studied both photos, comparing the faces and details. "There is a strong resemblance," he said seriously. "But we need to look for records or proof." Victor nodded in agreement. The rest of the morning passed with Amara helping Mrs. Lane dust and sweep. But her mind kept wandering back to the study. What if they found out she really was Victor's sister? Would she be allowed to stay? She dreamed of what it might be like to have a real family. She pictured herself eating at a big table, playing in the sunny garden, and sleeping in a soft, warm bed. In the afternoon, Victor called Amara into his study again. He smiled at her, but she could see the worry in his eyes. Mr. Harris found something, he said quietly. Amara sat down, her hands folded in her lap. Mr. Harris showed Victor some papers he had printed. "I looked for any records about missing children from your family, Mr. Langford," he explained. "I also searched the city's records for girls who matched Amara's age and description. I found a record of a child who went missing about the same time your sister disappeared." Amara's heart skipped a beat. Mr. Harris continued, "The records show that a little girl named Elise was found by strangers and sent to a children's shelter many years ago. After that, she was placed in foster homes, but her real name was never confirmed. The girl was only 4 years old, and the records called her Amara. That was the name given by the shelter staff." Victor listened with tears in his eyes. Amara felt as if the air in the room had grown still. "So, you think Amara is Elise?" Victor asked quietly. Mr. Harris nodded. It's very likely, but there is one more thing we can do to be sure. DNA test. Amara did not fully understand what a DNA test was, but she nodded. Will it hurt? She asked softly. Mr. Harris smiled. No, little one. It's just a small swab in your mouth. It will help us know for sure. Victor knelt beside Amara and squeezed her hand. If you are my sister, I will never let you be alone again, he promised. Amara's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were happy ones. She wanted to believe that soon she would have a family again. The DNA test was quick. Mr. Harris swabbed the inside of Amara's cheek and took a small sample from Victor as well. It will take a few days to get the results, Mr. Harris explained, but I am hopeful. He packed up his things and left the room. The waiting felt long, even though only a short time had passed. Victor tried to make it easier by inviting Amara to stay in a guest room for the night. The room was bright and filled with soft blankets and pillows. Amara had never slept in a real bed before. She curled up under the blankets and felt safe for the first time in years. The next morning, Amara woke to the sound of birds outside her window. She smiled, stretching in the soft bed. She got dressed and went downstairs, where Mrs. Lane greeted her with a big breakfast. Victor joined them, looking happier than ever. Today's a new day, he said with a hopeful smile. Later that day, Mr. Harris returned with the DNA test results. He handed the envelope to Victor, who opened it with shaking hands. He read the results, and then his eyes filled with tears of joy. It's true, Amara, he whispered. You are my sister. You are Elise. Amara could not believe it. She felt a wave of happiness so strong it made her cry. Victor hugged her tightly, promising to never let her go. Amara's journey from hunger and loneliness to love and family had come true. She finally belonged. She would never be alone again. Victor, too, felt his heart heal from the loss he had carried for so long. Together, they began to dream of their new life, a life filled with hope, kindness, and family. Amara's world changed in a single day. The DNA results proved that she was not just a stranger to Victor Langford, she was his real sister. Elise, the little girl who had disappeared so many years ago. The news brought tears to everyone's eyes, even Mrs. Lane's. The big house that once seemed so silent and empty was suddenly filled with voices, laughter, and the sounds of a new beginning. Victor hugged Amara tightly, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time safe. She rested her head on his shoulder. For the first time since she could remember, she believed everything was going to be all right. Victor promised, You will never be alone again, Elise. I will take care of you always. Amara wiped away her tears and they both smiled. The next few days were like a dream. Victor bought new clothes for Amara and showed her every corner of the house. He introduced her to his friends, telling them the amazing story of how his little sister had come back into his life in the most unexpected way. People were kind and happy for them. Amara felt shy at first, but slowly she started to enjoy the attention and kindness. Victor made sure Amara went to school, something she had always dreamed of. On her first day, she wore a clean dress and shiny shoes. Mrs. Lane packed her lunch and gave her a warm hug. Victor drove her to school himself, holding her hand the whole way. When they arrived, Amara was nervous, but Victor bent down and whispered, You are brave, Elise. You can do this. His words gave her courage. At school, Amara worked hard to catch up with the other children. Some lessons were difficult, but the teachers were patient, and her new friends helped her. Every day she learned something new, and every day she became more confident. Loved to read stories in the library, and sometimes Victor would come to pick her up early just to listen as she read out loud. One day Victor surprised Amara with something special. He took her to a big room in the house that had once been closed. Inside, sunlight poured through tall windows, and the walls were covered in beautiful paintings and old family photos. In the middle of the room was a piano. Victor explained that this room belonged to their parents, and it was filled with memories. He invited Amara to sit with him at the piano. She placed her fingers on the keys, and Victor smiled. You can learn anything you want, Elise. This is your home now. Every part of it is yours. As the weeks passed, Amara began to feel truly at home. She decorated her bedroom with drawings and photos. She planted flowers in the garden, choosing all her favorite colors. Sometimes she sat outside in the sunshine, reading books or watching the birds. She loved the feeling of soft grass under her feet, the warmth of the sun on her face, and the laughter that filled the house. Victor kept his promise to protect and care for Amara. He wanted to make sure that other children would never have to feel the pain of being lost or hungry. He started a foundation named after their mother, the Elise Foundation. Charity helped children who were alone or in need, giving them food, shelter, and a chance at a better life. Amara helped with the foundation in small ways, packing food boxes and writing notes of encouragement. She knew what it was like to feel hungry and scared, and she wanted to help others feel safe and loved. Soon, stories about Victor and Amara spread through the city. People were touched by how they had found each other. Some families who had lost hope came to the foundation, asking for help. Amara always greeted the children with a smile, remembering her own journey. She made friends with many of them, and together, they built a new family filled with hope. One evening, as the sun set behind the garden, Victor and Amara sat on the porch steps. The sky was full of golden light, and the air smelled like flowers. Amara looked at Victor and said, "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for loving me." Victor put his arm around her and said, "You found me too, Elise. You brought light back to my life." Inside the house, Mrs. Lane hung a new family photo on the wall. In the picture, Victor stood with Amara beside him, both smiling brightly. The house was filled with warmth and love. Amara realized that home was not just a place, it was where people cared for each other and stood together. Amara began to dream about the future. She wanted to help more children. She wanted to learn to play the piano, paint beautiful pictures, and write her own stories one day. Victor encouraged her dreams and told her she could do anything. With her brother by her side, Amara knew her world was full of new chances. Sometimes, at night, Amara would look at the old photo she carried for so long. The picture of her mother in the garden reminded her of the past, but it did not make her sad anymore. Instead, she felt grateful. Every part of her story, the hard days, the long nights, the kindness of strangers, and the love she finally found had brought her to this moment. The days of hunger and fear were behind her now. Amara was no longer alone. She was part of a family. With every sunrise, she felt the promise of hope and happiness growing brighter and stronger. Victor and Amara, once separated by years of loss, now walked forward together. They built a home filled with laughter, kindness, and dreams. And in that home, every child who visited found food, safety, and most of all, love. That was the gift Victor and Amara promised to share forever, a home where no one was ever left behind and where every lost soul could find a new beginning.